All right, welcome to the Scrum Power Hour. My name is Patty. I'll introduce myself in a little bit, but thank you all for coming and showing up here to the community, and of course to the conversation that you're about to witness with JJ and I. So a little bit about this group. I started this about 2 years ago as a monthly meeting. We went to weekly, and now we're back to bi-weekly. And it's kind of appropriate that we're going to talk about branding today because I am planning to rebrand this group a little bit. I've decided to move forward with a pure fireside chat format. I've gotten such a positive response and such positive feedback for it. So we are going to be moving forward bi-weekly fireside chat. We have some great folks lined up over the next couple of months. So hopefully you can join us for another one of these. But the mission here is to provide a support system for Scrum professionals to help them improve their skills in their current role and foster Scrum in their organization. So a little bit about me. Since we're talking about LinkedIn today, you probably all know me from LinkedIn, but my name is Patty. I am the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. I am passionate about Scrum and Scrum Master career development. So I do some private career coaching. As Sarah mentioned, the program, the cohort that I run is called the Scrum Simulator, where I help new Scrum Masters build those skills. I go into companies and I do workshops and speaking to help people along their journey in their Agile transformation. So our backlog tonight, a little bit of a welcome and an introduction, which we're kind of in right at the moment. Upcoming events. Anthony, I see that you're here. So Anthony is going to be coming in 2 weeks from now on March 21st for our next Fireside Chat. And we're going to talk about overcoming obstacles in our career progress, especially when it comes to failure. How do we pick ourselves back up and keep moving? So I'm excited about that conversation. And I have the next few lined up, but I will be announcing those coming up next month. In terms of our branding for this, I have been crowdsourcing a new name for this group based on our new mission, which is bringing in somebody who has a great story to tell on their Scrum or Agile journey. And I'm looking for a new name. So quick poll. I just wanted to gather some data here. Which name clearly represents the intent and purpose of the new mission of this group? So take a few moments to vote. And then, like I said, I'm working on all of this rebranding, and hopefully we'll be able to announce this soon. And as I was telling JJ before, I hope there's a clear winner, because I put a poll up on LinkedIn last week with 4 choices, and it really wasn't, there wasn't a front runner. So I'm hoping this will help me out today. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. And let's move to our next slide. All right, thank you so much, folks. So our backlog tonight, let's keep moving with it. Let's get to our fireside chat. I know you're all here for JJ. I am too, by the way. He is going to introduce himself and give you a little bit of background. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we are going to get started with our chat. All right, JJ, are you there?
I am here and I am ready.
Super. All right. Wow. I'm going to throw the first question out to you. We came up with kind of like a loose bullet point of prompts, just so we have something to go by. I may be looking over at the screen just to kind of prompt myself, but at some point we're just going to get talking, right? And the script goes away.
Yes.
So tell us, we know your name, obviously. Where are you located? What is your current role? And tell us a little bit about your career journey, very briefly, because we'll get to more details later.
Absolutely. So obviously, my name is JJ Vega. Thank you so much to everyone who came. Shout out to all the students from devCodeCamp that made the virtual journey. I'm really just proud to see all your faces here. So I'm currently located in Signal Mountain, Tennessee. For those of you familiar with the southern Tennessee area, I'm right next to Chattanooga on the Tennessee-Georgia border. My current role is a lead instructor with devCodeCamp. I've been teaching there for about the last 2.5 years and teaching technical skills primarily to career switchers in the software development and data analytics world. That's kind of the front end of my role. The back end of my role is I'm part of multiple Agile teams that are working in the background to deliver those services, as well as develop curriculum and content for the students in educational projects. My career journey started when I was born. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I've been in tech for about 6 years. I got my start in digital marketing. Before I got into digital marketing and then teaching software development and developing software, I was in the military for 4 years, United States Air Force, deployed a couple of times, got to work on some pretty cool projects, and have been working with people in some way, shape, or form pretty much since I was 18, and someone said, hey, that guy seems pretty articulate. Let's make him a manager. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of my background.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't think I knew you were in digital marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this
Well,
makes the branding makes sense.
yeah, it's a little known secret about me.
Awesome. Well, now it's not so secret anymore.
Now it's not so secret. Yep.
All right. So the next question I always ask of my guests is, how do we know each other? And I want people to have some context about what our relationship is. Aside from LinkedIn, right? Obviously, that's going to be the standard answer. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps, and then we'll get into the heart of our branding discussion.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this leading up to the call, and I was trying to remember who reached out to you. And I think it was you that reached out to me first. So we connected initially on LinkedIn, and I found you probably through Anthony, through just like those mutual shared connections. And I remember reading your content and thinking, okay, this is a woman that is clearly professional and knows what she's talking about, and I'd like to continue to learn from her. So I followed you, and I specifically remember you had mentioned me in a comment, and I said something about, wow, this kind of feels like being recognized by a celebrity. And you were very humble about that and said, no, I'm not a celebrity. This person's a celebrity. And then shortly thereafter, you reached out to me about doing something like this, and we had a wonderful conversation over Zoom and realized, wow, there's a lot here. Let's go ahead and make this an official Fireside Chat. And we've been gabbing ever since.
Yeah. And I love to hear people's perspective, right? Because you remember things differently, and I remember things differently. So it helps us all fill in the gaps, right? Oh, I forgot about that, right? But yeah, to your point, and I don't remember which post it was, but you did make that comment. It's like you couldn't believe that I was responding to you. And like when we got on the call, right, to meet finally on Zoom, I said, I'm just this regular person sitting in this corner of my bedroom here, right, looking out the window, watching like the crazy stuff going on down there below me in Charlotte. And we kind of got into that conversation, and we'll get into that. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but it was cool because, as I mentioned to you, that when I get on to calls with people for the first time, they will often say to me, I can't believe you're real.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, what'd you think I was? Because again, I think of myself as just a person who runs their mouth on LinkedIn, right? I'm not a celebrity. And that's why I tagged Martin, because everybody knows Martin. He's the real celebrity. And he responded. I'm like, oh my God, Martin responded to my comment, right? I tagged him because I know he's super busy, and but he's a great guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I said, like, I see you putting the content about Kanban out there, and we jumped on the call. And yes, Martin is amazing. I agree. My goal is to get him here. Shh. But as we were talking, you said, oh, I'm going to jump into the Kanban King. I can't even help it. We were talking, and I was listening to you talk about some, people reaching out to you, and they said, you're the Kanban King. And I was thinking that in my head, the same thing. And that's why I said, I'm like, that is validation for what you're putting out there, how people are reading you, how they're perceiving you. They are seeing you as somebody who's passionate about this framework, and they're starting to see you, or if they don't already, see you as an expert in it. So let's start there, right? Let's jump a few bullet points down.
Sure.
Where did this come from, and how does it feel to be called the Kanban King?
Oh boy. Well, I'll start with how it feels, and then I'll go into the origins. It feels weird. It still feels weird. It will probably always feel weird. But I'm also grateful. I think Jen's, who's another excellent connection on LinkedIn, the guy with the bike, he said, wow, it must be really nice to have a personal brand just handed to you. And I said, yeah, it's nice, but also it's a little intimidating. So the reason why it exists is because of Andrea. Andrea had been an incredible supporter, really engaged pretty much as soon as I started posting about this stuff. And she would repost a lot of my content saying, something like Kanban King strikes again, which started to sound like a plot of a movie, which I'm here for. That was super fun. And then people kept on mentioning it. And I was like, no. Like, look, I'm pretty new. Like, in terms of my Agile journey, just to give you a little context there, I would consider myself as having been a practitioner for about 3 years. And for about the first 2.75 years, really just winging it hard, right? But, with that said, someone calling me the king and sort of tying me to this expertise level that I don't feel like I have became very intimidating. But then it also started to become a call to, okay, if I'm putting myself out there like this and I'm going to continue to create content, then let's really dive into this. Fine, I will become an expert in this topic. Not to say that I would only ever use Kanban, because obviously there's a lot of tools and it's really the spirit of how the tools are being used that matters. But I got a niche. Let's work with that. Let's really become an expert and stay focused on the goal, which is to provide value to people through what I'm putting out there. So summarize, Andrea is the reason I'm here. Thank you, Andrea. You're the best. And it feels weird, and it probably always will. But I'm owning it.
No, that's great. And when we I was talking to you about before, again, before we logged on the call, we were chatting, and we were talking about this incredible group of people that we're starting to form, right? Me, you, Anthony, Anu, I can list this, and I gather you all in a chat. I'm like, okay, this is the meeting of the minds. I didn't know what else to call us, but it's like we can now reach out to each other and ask each other for help. Like, what do you think about this idea? Right. And I said in that chat, I'm like, the Kanban King, and every single person was like, yes, own it, own it, own it, own it. And to your point, it is humbling. It's, because now you feel like you're on this pedestal that you didn't be asked to be put on. But it's an amazing journey, because you are still learning. You still own the fact that you're learning. And now it's like a call to action.
Yes.
Right?
And a mission statement almost, right? Like, yes. Okay, I've got this label. Let's see where I can take it. And I'm hoping, and maybe this starts to tie in a little bit more to what we're talking about with personal branding and getting into this weird LinkedIn thing, or really any type of networking, putting yourself out there in a virtual space or real space. I feel like a newcomer, and I think I always will. And the biggest barrier that I have is being willing to put myself out there anyways, right? So the call to action isn't just, I'm going to be an expert in this like weirdly niche framework that I can't explain to my parents because they have no idea what I'm talking about. Like working with computers is already hard enough to explain. And I'm like, well, I kind of help people get organized, and there's like not tons of structure, and there's this board, and it originated with Toyota, and let's not go there, right? It's not just about, that it's that call to action to be an expert. It's also a call to action to being willing to put yourself out there and share what you know. And it's this cool double effect. The first thing is I get to meet some really cool people like yourself, right? And the second thing is that I actually selfishly get way better, way faster because I get feedback. People reach out to me and say, hey, that post you put out there, that was great, but there was just like one thing that I think you may have gotten wrong, which actually happened. And it was super useful, right? If I had not put myself out there in the first place, I would have never gotten that feedback. So it's a win-win, right? Like hopefully it's helpful to other people, but it's also selfishly very helpful for me because I'm growing and learning much faster than I would have alone.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I too have had that journey, right? And we've talked about, I'm like maybe I don't even know, like a couple of years ahead of you, whatever it is, right? But
Yeah.
there are people that are a couple of years ahead of me, right? So I have to put myself into perspective and not expect myself to have, and we're going to get into like engagement, and we're going to get into all of these things,
Mhm.
right? When some people that have been on the platform for 5 years might get 100 comments, the chances of me getting 100 comments are slimmer, and I can't compare myself to that person, even
Right.
though sometimes I do. And it's like, you have to be very self-aware that you don't get tied up into that. And to
Yeah.
your point, it's like, I still struggle with that.
Yeah. Yes. So funny thing, when I started with LinkedIn, started getting serious with LinkedIn about 3 months ago, I had set up a couple of metric goals, as one does, just to track my growth. And I
We're
used the
nerd.
most obvious, right? Yeah, it's the whole thing. Spreadsheets. And I think about 2 months in, I erased them. And it really just started becoming about how many people can I get into a call? Because to me, LinkedIn and any networking is not about the numbers. It's not about the likes, reactions. That feels good because I'm a dopamine driven creature, just like anyone else. Comments are great because they're conversations, right, in their highest form. And it's a great way to exchange ideas. But getting to that point where we're having a conversation and it's creating this sense of, like you said, now I know this person. Now I know if I have a question and I understand their expertise, they're going to be willing to help me out, and I'm going to be willing to help them out too. If I can stay focused on that and not get too sucked into the, wow, that post really did kind of crappy. That makes me feel bad about myself. Now I'm going to go stare off into the distance. Now my weekend is ruined, right? Like, no, it's not about that, but it's easy to go down that road.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we should talk about my weekend a few weeks ago where it was ruined. And I let it. So yeah, I was thinking this morning when I was on the treadmill, I was like, yeah, maybe I should talk about it. Maybe I should
Yeah.
talk about what happened.
Yeah.
But it is like my post tanked this morning. I was so super excited about it. I don't know what happened, right? My hook wasn't good. Um,
You didn't
People didn't get my
spend,
reference. I'm like super passionate about that darn TV show. Nobody got it, but I had to just move on with my day because I had too much other stuff to do. But
yeah.
my post yesterday did amazing, right? So how do you like ride that like roller coaster?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that if you are someone that is posting content, that roller coaster exists and it's not going away, right? There are currently 46 participants in this call. I can currently see 5 different videos. Everyone's videos besides that are off, right? I know those eyeballs are on right now. Hey, Sherry, good to see you. I know those eyeballs are potentially on me, or maybe they're flipping back and forth from one tab to another, right? We're on computers. I know they're listening, and there's a part of my brain that social animal part that is processing that and trying to figure out where I fit into this tribe right now, right? And the same thing happens on LinkedIn, but to the tune of, I don't know, thousands to millions of people. So there's this deep psychological and social psychological impact to being on this platform and putting stuff out there that can either be accepted or rejected by people in any given moment. And that does have an impact on your experience throughout the day. So I think that's the most important thing is like, let's just, like not try to be too cool for school. It's a real thing. It's going to happen if you're putting stuff out there. You're all on the roller coaster, right? And then from there, I think we can start to come up with the ways to keep ourselves grounded and sort of tuned into what our North Star is.
Yeah. So where do you want to go next? I mean, do you want to talk about like negative comments? Do you want to talk about, just obstacles in general?
I don't want to steal Anthony's thunder on obstacles because I feel like that's going to be a
Yeah.
whole.
Positivity. Right. Right.
I think we could
Well,
probably talk about the brand stuff.
yeah, let's do that. So when you're, oh gosh, I'm like, there's so many directions to go with this. In your opinion, like, why is it so important to build a professional brand on this platform? Because the why is what gets you through those days where you're like on the bottom of the roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that's important for me is to define what a brand is. Now, I want to qualify this. This is my definition. If there's anyone on this call that has a more formal marketing background, feel free to shoot me a DM and let me know, hey, you totally tanked that. And that's okay. I'm here to learn, right? So what is a brand? My best definition is a brand is what people say about you when you're not around, right? And so like, for example, let's take Apple. Apple is one of the strongest tech brands, and it is the strongest tech brand in the space. And if you walk into a room, if you go to a party and you ask someone about Apple, they probably have something to say. Could be really positive, right? They're the type of person that waits in line for an iPhone. Could be really negative because they're a Windows user or they're a Linux user. They're really pulling for the open source heroes, right? They may have certain feelings about the brand. It makes them feel warm. It makes them feel safe, right? There's a trust element. So a brand is what people think about you when you're not around, and really it's how they feel about you as well, right? It's a gut reaction exercise I like to do with my students when I'm teaching design and user experience for websites and interfaces is I'll just go through a bunch of different websites and I'll ask them to tell me, okay, without thinking about it, without rationalizing it, what is your gut reaction to this? Is this a ugh, or is this a or is this a whoa, right? Because that first reaction is going to determine whether or not someone stays on that website or they bounce. If this is actually what they need or not. So how does that tie into a personal professional brand? My belief is we all have brands, whether we want to or not, right? We all have brands. Every single one of us in this call and beyond, we all have a perception that other people have about us. Whether it is accurate or not, you have a brand, right? That's what the water cooler is there for, right? It's a good place to discuss other people's brands where they're not around, right? So we all have a brand, and especially on a platform like LinkedIn, where you can be a content creator and you can put stuff out there that elicits an emotional and rational response, we have a way that we're being perceived. When we're talking about professional growth, career growth, personal growth, leveraging that brand is important because how you're perceived also starts to influence the types of connections you're able to make. So that's my definition of a brand. And why I think it's important to be intentional about a brand is because you either own that brand, right? You're either the Kanban king, I'm going to get into this and I'm really going to try and be an expert, or you let other people determine what that brand is for you, right? And there's an element where you're always out of control of that. That's totally fine, right? We can't actually control people's perceptions. That's mind control to my knowledge that doesn't actually exist. But we can influence it and we can own it, and then we can use it as a way to build trust, to build authority, and to build relationships that are mutually beneficial, which I think is kind of the whole point. So, okay, I'm off my soapbox. That's my answer.
No, that was a great description. And I think it goes back to some of the things we've been kind of dancing around, right? We've built these great relationships. I would have never met you or some of these other people on this call otherwise. If I had never pressed post that first time and put myself out there and continue to put myself out there.
Yeah.
This would have never happened. Like, I created this, right? So when I talk to people about you create your own experience, or when they say, I can't, nobody will hire me, I don't have an experience, or, whatever it is that people say to me, I'm like, go out and create it, make it. I made this, right? And what skills have I developed as a result of doing this?
Yeah. No, absolutely. That mindset right there is important. It's very easy to feel like we're victims in our own experience. And so there's a lot that's outside of our control, and there's no question. There are ways that systems are inequitable, and we have to deal with those realities. But there's also ways that we can create our own opportunities. I mean, that's pretty much why I decided to start getting more active on LinkedIn. Is I just wanted to grow, and I realized that LinkedIn's sort of this pocket dimension that didn't exist 15 years ago. Like, think about the level of access we have to each other now, and there are no physical walls that can block that. That's incredible. Like, the types of people I've been able to talk to over the last 3 months, it still blows my mind. I go to sleep buzzing sometimes because I'm like, I can't believe I got to talk to this person, right? And learn from this person. That's a huge accelerator. But man, if you're not willing to put yourself out there and create those opportunities and overcome the very real obstacles that we have to putting ourselves out there and sharing where we are, sharing what we know, those opportunities don't manifest. And then we continue to be sort of trapped in our own circumstances.
Yeah, it's like growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right?
Yes. Yeah. Actually was just talking to someone over coffee that I met on LinkedIn about that exact thing today, fixed versus growth mindset. Carol Dweck, if you guys aren't familiar with her work, she is incredible.
Yeah. All right. Well, as I mentioned to you, I'm going to put myself on the hot seat.
All right.
And I did this, on LinkedIn a few days ago, and I wanted to see what the response is. But we put ourselves out there, and sometimes we have a perception of what we are, or what we want to be, or what we think we're putting out there. But is that what people are picking up? Is that what they see? Right? So I put this post out on LinkedIn, but I'm like, let's do this live on the call. And of course, I'm putting you on the spot. What do you think my brand is?
So I made an effort not to premeditate this.
Yeah.
So this is a kind of a on the spot read.
Yeah.
So a word that comes to mind when I think about the things that you're putting out there is justice. Mm-hmm. You have a deep sense of right and wrong. Funny example, I think I wrote something a couple of days ago, and it was about the whole Agile is dead meme, which, boy, that could be another conversation on its own. We'll not go down that road. But I spoke my piece about it. I wanted to put some positivity out there, but I talked about my experience coming into the Agile community and being able to meet amazing people like yourself, But then also seeing the cynicism, and you immediately grabbed onto that second, and you talked about like the justice element. That was just right there front and center. I'm like, this is a person that cares about justice, about right or wrong. So that's, I think if I were to target a center point for your brand, it's justice, justice in the space. Some other things, enthusiasm, you're very enthusiastic, you're a booster. People oriented and connecting. I mean, this whole thing, right? The choice to do something like this, where it could have just been us in a call and we record it, or it's a podcast and we just lob it out there into the void and see who sticks. But instead, you made this intentional decision to make this two people having a conversation in front of anyone else who's willing to sign up and participate. And so there's clearly a connecting and community building element to your brand as well. I could go on for the next 20 minutes, but I think that's like a pretty good read. I think justice, enthusiasm, and community orientation would be sort of like the trinity of Patty, if I had to nail it down.
That's awesome. And I know, Richard Samela, you're on the call here. A while back, you put out a post. I'm sorry, I'm calling you out, Richard.
That's okay.
This is not bad. This is not bad. A while ago, you put out a post about like horoscopes. Do you remember that? Maybe you don't even remember.
Horoscopes, I don't remember.
Yeah, or like personality types or something like that. So I'm a total 100% Aquarius. So I am very concerned with justice. And I will tell you, like, JJ, to talk about like this person that made me so upset on LinkedIn, it was because it's like content policing almost. Like, you're not allowed to talk about this. And I put my ideas out there, and not everybody always agrees with me, or they offer different perspectives. And I love it because it helps me see things from like a 360-degree view, which is very Aquarius. Like, I want to hear every side. But when I see people on LinkedIn posting like, you're not, and Iffy, you're on the call too, I saw you, right? We talked about this. If, the people who are content creators are putting out fluff and it's not valuable, and you need to post about these topics because they're providing business value or, tactical strategies. And here I am putting out like a post that says, you're Scrumtastic, right? And I did it anyway, because I'm like, you know what? You're not going to like tell people that their voice doesn't matter. Yes, your tactical posts are valuable, but my post about being Scrumtastic might brighten somebody's days up who wants to quit being a Scrum Master, right? And if you do the same thing, and I'm bringing you on and we're going to talk about this in a few weeks, but like, everybody's voice has something to say. And I'm like going to cry because I'm so passionate about this. Everybody has a voice, and everybody's voice deserves to be heard. And it's not just these people can produce content because we need to hear about these topics. Everything is valuable. And I'm sorry, person last week, if you don't see what I do as valuable, but that means you're not inclusive.
Right. I'll also mention that that's probably more about them.
Absolutely.
Right. I had a conversation in a comment with an individual who I think felt a little called out by something I'd written, and understandably so. And I really tried to start by empathizing with his situation. And I think it like kind of eventually came down to, well, this is a person that's pretty burned out. And that's valid. I mean, I think a lot of the people that are saying Agile is dead are probably in some pretty frustrating situations. Right. So I don't want to deny that. It's just, I think maybe a little short-sighted to call something totally done based off of like one fragment of our personal experience. So anyways, to come back to what you were saying, I think the justice thing is pretty salient, because I just watched you get so
Oh
ramped
my
up and
God,
so
soapbox.
passionate. Yeah. And I wanted to say, so I'm a pretty introverted person by nature.
Yeah.
And but I grew up with some amazing friends, and I had this one friend. His name is Keith. Keith is like a big Viking guy, just a sweetheart. And in my hometown, Richmond, Virginia, he was the guy that was bringing everyone together to do game nights. And without Keith, there was no game nights. It was just a bunch of introverts kind of reading in their own corners.
Mhm.
So I wanted to say that your temperament, your passion, and for people and for justice is incredibly important for this platform. And also, if you don't have that temperament, you're equally as valuable. In
Right.
fact, the more diverse temperaments, perspectives, experiences, values that we get in these conversations, the better the conversations become. And I think um, one of the things that makes me the most sad when I hear people talking about imposter syndrome and they're having a tough time putting themselves out there is what that means in terms of loss for the community, because we don't get to embrace those voices as a part of our collective, right? So anyways, just thought.
Yeah. I think, for me, and as I mentioned earlier, um, some of us don't come from technical backgrounds, right? And I'm one of
Yeah.
them. And I've learned a lot along the way. Please don't get me wrong, like I've had to, but that that has been a challenge for me because people close doors in my face because of it. Um, I see people on LinkedIn saying you need to have a technical background in order to be a Scrum Master. And I
Mm,
understand that. I completely understand because as somebody who's non-technical, sitting in a room of technical people, I get how overwhelming that is. I've had to train myself not to be overwhelmed by it and listen and look for different things and bring my value to that.
yeah.
And I think that because of that, I'm so passionate about helping people that are non-technical succeed in this role. And by default, other people come, technical people come along for the ride as well. And like, welcome to everybody. But I think because I've dealt with that injustice of, you're not good enough, you don't belong here, you don't belong at the table, whether it's direct, indirect, right, passive aggressive,
Right.
it it has caused me to want to fight for the other folks that are like a little bit further behind me. Is that the way you might put it? To help them along, like it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that I've told students, you're in the call, you get to hear this probably for the 10 millionth time. Um, you always want to look to the person that's 2 to 3 steps ahead of where you're trying to go and try to learn from them. If they're willing to mentor you, then, that's awesome. Right. And then I think it's important for those of us who have been down the path to reach back. It's not backwards. Maybe it's not even a linear progression. Maybe it's not the right mental model, but reach back and see if you can help someone along. Like if you can help remove an obstacle or shed some light or create some clarity for someone else so they don't have to experience some of the pain that you had to going through your process, that's progress, right? That's how progress is created, but it definitely doesn't come from ignoring people that are further behind on the path. And I think that's a real strength that you have, that you are paying attention to people who could face similar obstacles and try to create spaces where those obstacles are broken down.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
As I mentioned to you, before the call, I did put that post up there a few days ago because I wanted to see like what people thought. And I hit post, and this is something like we can now segue into this, right? I hit
sure.
post and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? I have to explain myself because people are going to think this. And I'm like, Patty, don't project on this. Don't project what you think other people are going to think about this post. Leave it be, right? I just said, what is my Agile brand?
Mm, yeah.
And it like walk away.
So I question for you before we segue,
Yeah.
how did it feel afterwards in terms of the responses? Was the projection that you had going into hitting post something that bore out in reality after the post?
I think, the responses were great. I love to see what people wrote and I really appreciate it. And that's why I tagged people because I'm like, I value what you people see.
Yeah,
I value your thoughts. Please share them with me. And yeah, do it publicly, right? Because like I've got to walk the walk. But, I think my concern was, oh, I don't want people to think I'm trying to get accolades, right? Like, oh,
sure.
Patty, let me tell you why you're so great. I'm like, the reason why I put that out of my mind is because I'm like, no, the question was clear. What is my Agile brand? Tell me in the comments. Don't project. And that's another thing. Like when you get negative responses or comments from people on your posts, be very careful. You're not projecting something onto that's not there. And that is the one thing it has taught me so much. Yeah, there's a couple of people that make me really upset. And it does have to do with, it is always about content policing. What kind of coach are you to ask that question? You shouldn't be asking that. Like people say this to me.
Mm,
And I'm like, I can ask whatever I want, right? But the point is, right? I've learned so much to take a step back and think about, is that what that person meant? Or am I reading into this? And
right.
it's helped me out so much and see everybody's comment as a gift in a way that I couldn't 3 years ago.
How long did it take you to get to that place where you're able to sort of increase the gap between stimulus and response and start to really pull yourself back from those reactions?
That's a good question. I mean, it's been like 3 years, right, that I've been doing this. I would say, I think it took me it took me a couple months to get some engagement and to get people to like actually write comments. So that was a milestone, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, people are reading this. Like it's not
Right,
crickets. um, but then you have to get a certain number of comments before it's like all of a sudden the negative one shows up, right?
right.
Statistically. And I think it took me the first one to like I was taken aback by it. And then I got upset. And then I was like, don't tell me I know what I'm talking about, person, right? Um, but I think the gap got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah. So it became a
I can't
practice
answer your
almost.
question, sorry.
Right, right.
I'm trying to be a politician. I can't answer your question. I don't know. But the gap does
Plead the
get
fifth.
bigger. And it's very rare that I get upset at somebody. And like I said, it's because they're trying to shut people's voices down.
Yeah.
My own, right?
Right.
That's the one that like is like this, right? When I read it in my feed. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Why don't you tell us? I'm running my mouth here. Why don't you tell us like what has been your experience with all this? Because you've been doing this for only 3 months, right?
Yeah, 3
Consistently.
months. Yeah. And I'll also try and kind of use my response. I saw this come up in the chat. Um, just to talk about how do you start building a brand? What does that mean? So hopefully folks can walk away from this conversation also feeling like they've got some things they can take to their own practice. And I said a key word there, practice, right? So practice implies repetition and it implies the development of a skill. So 3 months ago, I came out of my cave and I decided, okay, I'm going to be on LinkedIn and I'm going to start posting. And I have a little bit of a secret edge in that the previous year, I was writing nonstop for my job. I wrote a ton. And I wrote a lot for public consumption as well, because this was for my current role, content development. So I'd been developing the skill, developing the skill, developing the skill, and then I decided, okay, it's time to take this public. I made a couple of agreements with myself. The first agreement was I'll post about 3 times a week. So that was kind of the first thing, was developing some kind of a cadence. And Yeah, I'm the Kanban king. So was there a couple of sticky notes on the board? Yes. And my goal was just to move them across to done every single week. And I wasn't too worried about likes, comments, reactions, so on and so forth. So that was the first thing. Then I started to realize that what I was experiencing as most valuable wasn't just people responding to my posts, but getting to engage in conversations with other people. So then I added one more thing, which is for about 15 minutes to a half an hour every day, I'm going to engage on other people's content that's not my own. And I'm not just going to say, great post, right? I'm going to try to have a conversation with them, right? You posted something that you're thinking about. What do I also think about it? Can this turn into a back and forth? And so that really turned into some cool stuff. That's really how you and I met, Patty, was once I started to make that dedication, right? That commitment that I was going to do this practice. It started to really spawn off these cool conversations. So it wasn't just about what I was putting out there, it was also about lifting other people up, creating value for them at the same time. And on top of that, as I was writing, I realized I had to come up with stuff to write about. So this is something that I run into a lot, both teaching people how to code and then also talking about creativity. A lot of people think they need to sort of already have a fully formed post before they can start writing. For me, the process of writing is how I figure out what I'm thinking about. Right? It's why journaling is such a powerful practice, because you often don't know what's kind of rattling around inside your skull until you put it down. So as I started to write more, and then as I started to see what people responded to, that started to then focus in my own content creation efforts. So I was able to figure out, okay, wow, people really seem to be responding to every single post where I talk about Kanban and put a picture of that damn board up, right? Okay, something's going on there. There's some kind of interest, either that or the algorithm really likes whiteboards. So let's go for it, right? Let's see what's going on. And then this sort of develops. So I've been at it for 3 months. I think, again, I'm lucky because I had spent a fair amount of time learning to make writing a practice. So it's given me a little bit more of an up ramp. But then I think the other thing for me was not being so focused on me, like what am I putting out there, but really putting the focus on other people and trying to provide value. And sometimes that means I have something articulate to say. Sometimes it's just showing appreciation for someone putting themselves out there. Like, I think some people that are dealing with imposter syndrome think, well, I don't have anything valuable to add. Why would I put myself out there? My question would be, can you say something nice to someone, right? And if you could say something nice to someone, then trust me, that's really valuable. In fact, that could change the course of someone's day. So that's sort of how I started to build up my brand. And there are some other intentional steps. Like if you look at my profile, you'll see the color blue everywhere, right? Profile picture, header. See, I'm wearing blue now. I got a blue wall behind me. I like to help people feel like they can trust me. Blue is often the color of trust. So there are some intentional decisions you can make, but that's like me being a brand nerd, right? It doesn't have to be that. I think what's most important is put yourself out there, write about what you care about, write about your experiences. You're a bootcamp student, so you don't think you have anything valuable because you've never been employed as a developer. Well, guess what? Someone out there is looking to get into this field and has never looked for boot camps before. Could write about that, right? Someone is always 2 or 3 steps behind where you are. There's almost no such thing as a ranked beginner. So write about what you care about, try to offer value to people, and then maybe create some spaces for reflection. How did it go this week? How would I maybe like to pivot? Be a little agile about it, bring it full circle, right? Inspect and adapt. So that's been my journey. I freak out every time I hit the post button. I know I sound pretty confident and articulate about it, but I still get all the nerves beforehand. I think consistency is the most important thing, and focus on what you're offering to people, how you're creating value, not so much on like, what if no one likes me? I think if you focus on the value, positivity is incredible, right? Like we see how draining it is to experience negativity. Just be positive, be a happy person, right? It's like Agile is cool, guys. It's a really cool way to work. It's different. I had a blast learning about it the last couple of years and seeing it really make an impact on teams. I think if we can get excited about that, that becomes infectious. And all of a sudden the Agile is dead crowd, has something else to read that can maybe counterbalance some of the voices in their heads. So, okay, I'm off the soapbox. That's been my 3 months. That's how I think personal branding can happen, is just start by writing, start by creating value, inspect, adapt, and see what happens. Doesn't have to be complicated.
And I think both of us are good at coming up onto soapboxes, right?
Mhm.
And I think, I know we're like at time and we haven't even put out for questions. So we can have a couple. But I think the last thing that I want to say is, like, you're still here. I'm still here. We're still like alive. We're surviving this thing. To your point, it's never going to get easy, especially if you're always pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But like, if somebody sitting here in their corner of their bedroom can do it, right, then anybody can. It's just, you have to make up your mind to do it and not give up, and find people, amazing people like yourself, right, to keep you on that journey. Because it is
Yeah.
very easy to quit. And if you don't have a support system, then it's easy, like I always say, hide under the bed. And never
Yeah.
come out.
Or get stuck in your head, because that's the other side of being in our, PJs, at least from the bottom down, and hanging out in rooms by ourselves, working on computers, is it's really easy to get stuck in your head. So the antidote to that is connection, in my experience.
All right, well, let's take maybe one question. Sorry, folks. Let's take a question. Maybe who has the hardest question for JJ?
Oh boy.
Question. What is the purpose? What is your goal in increasing your LinkedIn presence and engaging with more people? What is the ultimate goal that you're looking for in that?
So that is an incredible question. Also, it's really good to experience you in the pseudo flesh, because I've really loved what you're putting out there. It's super cool.
Very nice to see you as well. Very nice to see you.
Yeah, it's a great question. My North Star, and I've written about this before, can check my backlog. My North Star is to be in a conversation as much as humanly possible. And the reason why I got to this was because for the last couple of years, I sort of shunned networking because I thought it was this game that I didn't want to play. And that was a really lonely time in my life. After I had just moved to a different state, I just moved to Signal Mountain about a year and a half ago. And so I just didn't want to do it like that anymore. I didn't want to be kind of on my own, growing professionally on my own. So really my ultimate goal is to be in a conversation as much as possible. That's it. I mean, professional opportunities are great. The ability to develop my skills creatively is great. But it really does come down to getting into calls with people like Patty or Philip or Anu or Tom or whoever, right? I just want to build relationships. That's my goal.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. I really, really enjoyed that answer. It's all about connecting with other people and everything like that. I very much see why you're an Agilist.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, an amazing one at that. All right. Well, I mean, everybody knows where to find JJ. I mean, we don't even have to say, tell us where to find you. We know, right?
Yep, I'm out there. LinkedIn. That's the place. It's JJ Vega. If you see a big bald head and kind of a weird blue halo background in the profile picture, you found the right place.
Any last words that you want to say before we sign off this evening?
Just a huge thank you to everyone who came. This was super fun. Patty, huge thank you to you as well for inviting me in. yeah, networking is not a dirty word. It really is all about people and building relationships. And that is its own reward, even though it does come with other opportunities that can open up too.
Amazing. Well, thank you everybody for showing up to the community here. Thank you, JJ, of course. I mean, we could probably, like we said, talk for the rest of the night, but
Yeah.
we all have dinner to go to and work to go to, especially if you're in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Some of us have to go to bed. But yeah, so we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. Anthony, we're excited to talk to you. I can't wait to see what comes out of our conversation, because I know one-on-one we've had some incredible ones. So I will see you all maybe tomorrow on LinkedIn. Like I said, I'll clean up the recording. It'll be in your inbox on Monday, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday/Wednesday. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
folks.
Patty.
Good night,
Thanks, JJ.
everyone.